Chapter 18. 0432 hours, April 16th, 2539 Military Calendar. Metrome System. Planet Boundary. Salvation. Entertainment and Finance District. It took Arthur, Sheila, and their complement of Marines and militiamen several hours to fight their way through the beleaguered city of Salvation. After Solomon and the ODSTs took off with a few warthogs, they were forced to slog their way through the city center street by street, engagement after engagement with little in the way of support. They were fortunate enough to co-opt a Scorpion main battle tank from the Marines previously with Solomon's ground forces, as well as the occasional broadsword gun run when they emerged in an open area of the city. Catastrophic losses on Arthur's platoon began to mount. However, once they got closer to the Covenant battlecruisers, in position farther south toward General Grant's last known position, an incessant horde of Covenant ground troops and vehicles continued to pour out of the gravity lifts on the behemoth warships. Too many for even a pair of Spartan super soldiers. Unbeknownst to the majority of the Covenant soldiers, though, were the vast layouts of the subterranean passageways beneath the city. Thanks to some quick intelligence patched over from Boundary's agricultural artificial intelligence, Harvest Moon, the troopers were able to break contact with the enemy in time to seek refuge in the tunnels and expedite the mission. Appearing just a handful of blocks away from the last known location of the general, they emerged without incident to the Springfield Municipal Bank. In the waning hours of the night, the remaining few squads of Marines and militiamen combed the streets for survivors and any equipment they could salvage. The Spartans wished they found anything positive to report. All that surrounded the entourage were dead bodies and so much wreckage at the hands of the Covenant. Civilians, grunts, elites, and even a hunter pair all scattered in varying positions throughout the streets surrounding the bank. A macabre scene illuminated only by the eerie, faint purple glow from the carriers above, and scattered piles of rubble still in flames from the carnage wrought by their invaders. "Sergeant," Arthur said as he helped another Marine out of a sewer exit, "set security. I'm going to go check out the bank. Maintain a perimeter. We'll be back soon." He raised Sheila privately on Team Comm. "How's it looking over there? Looks like the signal emanates from that bank across the street." Spartan Sheila jogged up the destroyed stone steps of the Springfield Municipal Bank, slowed, and raised her assault rifle toward the enormous double doors before her. She paused and glanced over in Arthur's direction. An amber light flashed on Arthur's display. "I don't know about this one. Look at that caved-in section of the roof. Has to be from a Wraith or Seraph strike. My question is, why would they target the bank? There's no strategic value to this facility." A troubling question indeed, Arthur thought. He waited for the Marines to finish setting up security around the city block and sprinted from cover to close the distance safely and reach his teammate. Even though he had the cover of darkness to his advantage and the city in this area was as quiet as a church, Spartans never took unnecessary risks. He bounded from an overturned vehicle to reach Sheila. She gave a quick lateral fist motion, then curled 2 fingers to the right. They'd breach on his count and she'd hook right. He gave a quick nod and took the shotgun off the magnetic strip on the rear of his armor. 3. He paused, counting down fingers. 1. The pair shoulder charged each door and splintered it with ease. They raised their weapons and began to sweep the area. Before them were piles of debris and rubble, evidence confirming that it was most likely a Wraith plasma mortar strike based on the circumference of the blast crater. The question still remained why the gun carriage would choose this target, and then move on. Perhaps it was just part of a little shock and awe. Didn't matter, Arthur thought, and finished his scan of the open atrium ahead. "Clear left," he reported. "Clear right. All clear." Arthur enabled his helmet's flashlight and scanned the room in more detail now. He called out in a low voice, "General Grant, sir. Are you here?" Nothing. The only noise that sounded now was the sharp clanks of stone rubble beneath their sabatons. The pair began tearing apart the rubble beneath them. Chunks of wall, desks, and other various wood or metal wreckage flew through the air as they scrambled to reach the bottom of the debris. Arthur gave up on this effort quickly, leaving Sheila to finish in that section near the entrance. He swept his muzzle up and down the various hallways and vaults of the bank, looking for any indication the general was there. He rounded yet another hallway to reveal the opposite of the entrance he took when reaching the second floor of the receiving atrium. Jogging down the hallway revealed an open promenade, and chunks of chairs and tables were scattered the otherwise pristine marble flooring. That's when he noticed the first organic thing in the bank. lying motionless beneath a frame of ceiling. The Spartan called out quietly to the person and heaved the debris aside to find an unresponsive Marine lying face down in a shallow pool of blood. Arthur rolled him over to scan for an identifier tag. His heads-up display conducted a facial recognition scan with only a 79% probability of match, due to the damage done to his ocular cavity from the impact of the strike. His computer read, Corporal Emmanuel Vasquez. Arthur wished there was something he could do right now, but there wasn't any time. He couldn't take the body with him, so he snatched the dog tag hanging from the Marine's neck and placed it in a pouch. He stood up and peered over the splintered railing of the promenade overlooking the entry to the bank. Farther below and to the left of the doorways they entered, Sheila was nearly complete with sifting through the rubble that barricaded the entrance. "Wait a minute," she called out. "Got one here. Hold one." She yanked the top of a desk off and sent a plume of dust into the air, obscuring Arthur's line of sight. Another loud clang rang out, glass shattered, and finally the mist cleared. "Got him," Sheila said. Sir. She began and started examining his body to look for any wounds. Sheila checked for a pulse. Severe head wound. Fractured tibia. Low pulse, she reported. "Let's get him out of here then, Teal 3, Arthur said and slung his shotgun. He took the general's shoulders and gently escorted the limp body through the doorway. He raised a corpsman on the radio and signaled him to stabilize General Grant. The Spartans handed the man off and raised Harvest Moon on comms. "Command, we located and secured the general." Returning to the bunker for debrief, static washed over the Spartan's helmet. A single broken message returned to him. "Acknowledged, Teal Leader. Rendezvous immediately for new mission assignment. New developments. Command out." The underground network of service corridors and storage tunnels paid in dividends for Teal Team. Now that they had accomplished their objective and located the general, they could get back to Cal's insane plan to take down the crippled Covenant battlecruiser across the mountain range. They left the hodgepodge, mixed group of Marines and militiamen on the streets of Sanctuary, utilizing their warthogs to pull back and reinforce other areas of the city from the subterranean tunnels. They quickly approached the western sector of Sanctuary's city center, locating the governor's command bunker underneath the Capitol building. Sheila began climbing a ladder back to the street level, raising her M6D sidearm and cautiously sweeping the exterior of the hatch above. After a tense moment, she motioned an all-clear sign and exited the tunnel. Arthur followed suit, quickly ascending the 3-meter climb to gain a view of the street. This section of the city had been hit hard over the last few hours. Farther down the street in the darkness shone a patrol of Covenant soldiers. He followed Sheila's lead and took a bounding approach toward the courtyard of the Capitol building. They couldn't afford to get caught up in a firefight so close to arguably the most important control and intelligence cell on the planet right now. If this location was compromised, it would be extremely difficult to exfil the leadership vital to the coordinated defense of the planet. The pair stalked toward the front of the gates of the inner atrium and contacted the security system's AI via the computer terminal to the exterior of the entrance. A brief moment passed. Apparently, the exterior cameras were verifying the identities of the two Spartans, and the door's magnetic locks were released with a deafening thud. They entered to weapons drawn on them, and a squad of militiamen covered the single elevator, the lifeline to the command bunker. A tense moment later, their squad leader called the order to stand down. "This way, sir," he said, and motioned for the troopers to allow access to the elevator. A quick ride down and into a claustrophobic tunnel network led the pair, directly to the governor and her cadre of department heads. Through dizzying twists and turns of the tunnel network, they rounded a final corner to see a woman trying her damnedest to keep her composure. The combination of stress, lack of sleep, and use of stimulants to clear away the creeping edges of sleep deprivation had worn on her face like a mask. Wrinkle creases began to deepen on the edges of her eyes, and her skin dried out from the dry subterranean air. She stood uneasy over a collection of documents and field reports before she came to, only realizing what the matter was after turning to see two hulking dark figures approaching her. "Spartan 079, she said hesitantly, experiencing a brief moment of overwhelming awe at the spectacle of a pair of 2-meter-tall walking tanks. "Yes, ma'am, and Sheila 065. Reporting for mission reassignment as ordered." "Good, please join us. I hear you have a plan for the damaged Covenant carrier across from the Iran mountain range." "Yes, ma'am. My scout Spartan Cal 141 identified several hull breaches in the cruiser. She's currently reconnoitering the area north of the mountain range. Your battalion commanders should be receiving updates periodically via Harvest Moon and the remaining air assets in the sky." He turned to one of the militia communications officers. all of whom lined the walls of the bunker, listening in to multiple communiques simultaneously. Mission reports, situation updates, and casualty reports flooded every frequency. "Sir, can you get a secure communication array to these coordinates?" Arthur's onboard computer transferred the global coordinates of Cal's position to the comm officer. A brief moment passed, and he gave a thumbs up. Arthur now had a secure line to his teammate. "Sierra 4, this is Teal Leader." Several heartbeats passed, Cal weighing the likelihood of discovery if she responded from her sniper's hide. "Go for Sierra 4, whispered the female Spartan. "We've got the green light for your mission. Sit rep." Sierra 4. Cal checked her encryption and counter-intrusion suite of her Mjolnir armor. Her close proximity to the two Covenant vessels had a moderate probability of interception, if there were a halfway decent comms tech aboard the ships. After conferring with her counter-intrusion suite and verifying that the frequency-hopping double encryption scheme was secure, she determined the likelihood of discovery was in acceptable parameters. Cal 141 clicked her comm piece on. Remains 2 Covenant battlecruisers, multiple hull breaches in westernmost position. Break. A brief pause over the encrypted channel. Banshee squadrons patrolling south and west approaches. Recommend bulk force approach from the east. Break. So that meant the Covenant were wary of a counteroffensive over the Iran mountains directly to their vulnerable asset hovering in the sky. And they also had the foresight to protect the coastline. That left only one option for Teal Force: insertion by sea over the cliffs to the west. North was simply not strategically viable. There remained one metropolis, Sanctuary, that was unmolested by the Covenant so far. Arthur would like to keep it that way. It would also take way too much time to circle around the ocean, maintaining an extreme low flight ceiling to deter radar detection, then double back south to attack from behind. There remained 12 Wraith tanks, 32 Ghost Rapid Assault Craft, and several Revenant Swift tanks on patrol around both cruisers. 12 Shade turrets in superior firing positions overlooking the valley, and one of those badass anti-aircraft cannons is halfway to being assembled. Estimate another 2 hours until it's up and running. Looks like both the damaged vessel and its sister ship have their shields down. "Cocky, aren't they?" she said dryly. "Over." Cal finished. This was undoubtedly a suicide mission in the eyes of many once he explained in layman's terms to the civilian staffers in command. Arthur turned from the comm station the broadcast was coming from and surveyed the room. He wasn't always the most adept at social interactions with civilians, so he removed his helmet to ease the tension. "Ma'am," he turned to Governor Huxley. "Cal 141 developed a plan earlier in the day. It's sound. What exactly do you have in mind, Spartan?" "We'll take the Nefaris's complement of vehicles, ones that we can scrounge up right now, and a plussed-up mixed battalion of Marines and militiamen outside the city with a column of armor assets. They'll move through the southeast corridor leading through the mountain range and hit them hard. The assault has to seem sincere, or they won't take the bait. From there, a strike team led by myself will fly out past the coast and double back, emerging from under the cover of radar and over the cliffs to surprise the enemy." The thing that Arthur had trouble mentioning, however, was that Sheila, a squad of ODSTs, and himself would not participate in the assault on the ground. They'd be in AV-14 Hornets escorted by a few broadsword fighters and enter the breached hull via aerial insertion. Main Force will assault the ground and air patrols of the Covenant vessels, while Teal Force will insert to the breached sections of Covenant vessel, designate Easy Catch, and detonate a Fury tactical thermonuclear device. We can't chance the crew raising the vessel's shields, so going in covertly with a small strike team is our only option. With any luck, the other cruiser in the desert will be within effective range of the blast. We can take out 2 birds with 1 stone. "Who will comprise this assault force?" one of the governor's staffers asked. Arthur's HUD displayed the name and title of the middle-aged woman. Director of Structural Engineering and City Management, Mallory Johnson. She had a stoic, strong look to her face. Her body was rigid with tense anticipation. She seemed oddly prepared for the eventuality, even as a civilian. "I'll coordinate with our supplemental forces currently in reserve. They'll manage the vehicles and half the personnel." He paused and turned to Mallory. "The other half will need to come from your militia. We don't have enough spare soldiers to commit to a mechanized attack of this size." "I see." She turned to the governor. "Melissa, with your permission, now that General Grant is incapacitated, I'd like to liaise with our commanders and get our troops ready." "Of course," Governor Huxley said. "Use the auxiliary magazine down the tunnel. It's a larger storage room that's barely half full." The director promptly left the room, datapad in hand for directions, and a cadre of staffers was trailing dutifully behind. "Ma'am, for this to work, we have to commit all the way." he reiterated. "The assault has to feel sincere and keep the Covenant's attention long enough for us to get in." He hated that the UNSC's logistics were so strained. If Arthur had more time, more Marines, more ships, more anything, he could increase everyone's odds of survival, no matter how minuscule. He hated that the UNSC had to rely on the brave militiamen and women of these colony worlds to stave off the smallest of Covenant attacks. Most of all, he hated that he was sending these people to their deaths. The strategic value of destroying a Covenant battlecruiser, or more optimistically 2 ships, was impossible to ignore. After several days of fighting, and the orbital assets of Captain Fulton's flotilla gone for the time being, attempting to at least blood the Covenant's morale was their best option at defying their continual onslaught. If they could actually win the fight on this nowhere planet, the ships could even be requisitioned from Oni's Xenomaterials group and salvage the ships for technology. It was a standing doctrine since the beginning of the war, which started over 15 years ago, to capture any Covenant technology for study and reverse engineering. I know we're asking a lot from your militia, but it's what we've got. The ground forces will be supplemented by our remaining broadsword and longsword fighters for limited sorties, as well as several Scorpion main battle tanks and Warthogs. And I might be able to convince Major Rashad to let go one of his Kodiak M400s. Arthur was referring to the immense mobile artillery platform. Although it moved slowly on a wheeled platform, it was devastating to conventional ground vehicles. He figured it wouldn't have to be airlifted far, just shy of the Iran mountain range's base and to the south. Its maximum effective range was well over that distance, so it would be an effective screen for the initial advance. A grim silence filled the command bunker in anticipation of the governor's answer. She was faced with a tough choice, both ethically and politically. She saw the figures the Spartan was typing into the computer terminal next to the central table, which dwarfed the cramped bunker. The number displayed on the tactical monitor meant a large percentage of her total militia would be mobilized. If this turned into a disaster, which she believed it very well may, she could never live with herself. And if her planet was spared a defeat, she would unquestionably be ousted from any political office ever again. On the other hand, if she didn't mobilize her forces and the planet fell, she would also risk being chastised into an early retirement. The inevitable mudslinging by any political opposition, whether from any boundary evacuee or someone perhaps from the inner colonies, would tarnish her reputation as a leader. She knew she'd be painted as weak and undecisive. Why didn't you fight back when you had the chance? Didn't you have the United Nations Security Council to watch over you? She continued to weigh the odds in her mind, gauging which option was less likely to commit political suicide. She reasoned that deploying her forces in an offensive action rather than maintaining a reactionary force would be in her and her planet's best interests. After all, they'd probably all die anyways. Why not go out in a blaze of glory? She didn't need to ask an AI like Harvest Moon what the chances of her or any other boundary citizen of making it off-planet alive were. Governor Melissa Huxley nodded her head slowly, deep in contemplation. "I agree with this plan. Director Johnson, start working out the logistics with our commanders. Petty Officer 079. If that's what I think I'm supposed to call you. I'll leave you to the finer details. I'll continue to analyze what battlefield data we have with my staff." She turned to Bernard Acasio's Merchant Marine representative, the head of the Merchant Marine affairs of the entire planet. Bernard Acasio had decided he was best used elsewhere across continent. He was struggling to conceal and escort the civilian evacuation vessels across the vast plains of the supercontinent. "Mr. Perez, please provide me the latest figures on our evacuation efforts." She needed to trust the Spartans and their commanders on this one. After all, they were the best of the best. She needed to focus on the things she could control and the things that would save her constituents. The governor panned her gaze around the room to study the faces of the military leaders and advisors that were left. Many of them had walked away either before General Grant's stunt or well before, opting to lead their men and women from the front instead of cowering in the government's safe room. The few company and field-grade officers stood with their literal backs against the wall, with little they could do to challenge the massive armored soldiers' plan. The Spartans surveyed the room one last time, checking to see if there were any questions on the plan. There were none. After another moment of silence, the governor convened the meeting. The room erupted once again into a bustling, chaotic control nerve, and Arthur motioned toward a comm station. He took the same encrypted channel from before and raised Cal. "We've got mission approval and are wrapping up the details down here, Teal 4. Sit tight. The cavalry's coming." We'll let you know when we're on the way. Out. He clicked off the frequency and looked at Sheila. She tipped her helmet, approving of the plan. They turned toward the door of the command bunker and headed toward the elevator. Back to work, Spartan.